By the time the necklace touched the poor girl's skin, every light in the store had turned to her. The gold caught the ceiling spots and burst into tiny suns, bright, blinding, impossible to ignore. The sales attendant froze mid-speech. 2 security guards closed in, hands hovering near her shoulders as if the small chain could hurt someone. Customers stopped pretending to browse and stared. "Step away from the young lady," a calm voice said, gentle but firm. Heads turned. He stood in the doorway with reins still on his shoulders, the kind of presence that makes a room quiet. People in Lagos knew his last name from headlines and billboards. People in Atlanta recognized his face from charity galas streamed online. Kenechi Okafor, billionaire builder of hospitals, tech hubs and quiet miracles, had walked into a jewelry shop on a Tuesday. He didn't look at the price tag. He looked at the girl. Her name was Tiana. She wore a faded denim jacket a size too big, sleeves rolled at her wrists, and shoes that knew how to whisper around a city. 15 minutes earlier, she had stopped at the glass to admire a necklace shaped like a crescent moon cupping a small, warm stone. She had leaned close to study the tiny engraving on the clasp. The attendant had watched her reflect in the glass and decided reflection looked like suspicion. Now, the necklace lay on Tiana's collarbone like a secret that finally found its way home. "I only wanted to see it," Tiana said, voice small but steady. "I didn't mean." "Sir," one of the guards interrupted, shifting his weight. "We had an alarm at the case and this young woman was admiring beauty," Kenechi said, walking toward them. "That is not a crime." He glanced at the attendant. The attendant's posture loosened but pride kept his jaw tight. "With due respect," the censor tripped. "We have protocol." Kenechi smiled, the way a sunrise knows you can't argue with it. "Then let's finish the protocol kindly." He lifted the gold, light as breath, and adjusted the clasp at the back of Tiana's neck with careful hands, like he was fitting a crown on a child's head. Everyone gasped. It was outrageous, reckless, and, somehow, gentle. "Now," he asked the attendant, "how much is this?" The attendant swallowed. "It's 1.8 million naira. A murmur moved through the room like wind through leaves. Kenechi nodded and took out his card. "She'll wear it out." Tiana's hand flew to the pendant. "Sir, please, I can't." "You didn't ask for anything," he said quietly, lowering his voice so only she heard. "You only admired it. Sometimes," his eyes flicked to the guards, the mannered crowd, the glass cases where pretty things lived under heavy locks. "Sometimes a person needs proof beauty can admire them back." He turned to the register. The attendant, flustered now, tried to smooth the receipt paper with fingertips that suddenly felt too large. As the machine whirred, Tiana's throat tightened. It wasn't just the cost. It was the strange rightness of the pendant against her skin, as if it had been waiting for a heartbeat that sounded like her own. "Sir," the guard said as the receipt printed. "She can't just walk out. We need to log." "Then log," Kenechi said, still warm, still unbothered. "Write that a customer was treated with dignity." The attendant tore the slip and slid it across. Kenechi signed, pushed it back, then paused. "May I see the clasp again?" he asked Tiana. She turned, lifting her hair. The clasp was tiny, delicate, the hinge barely larger than a grain of rice. Kenechi leaned close. His breath caught. He lifted the piece and held it to the light, eyes narrowing at what only he seemed to notice. There, etched so fine it looked like a thread in the metal, was a name. Amara. A tremor went through him. He blinked, steadied himself, and looked again to be sure. The same looping that he had practiced with a goldsmith years ago, the same hidden engraving he had insisted on adding to a design that never reached the person it was created for. He reached into his pocket with hands that had negotiated billion-dollar deals without shaking and pulled out a small, battered leather notebook. He always carried it. Inside was a sketch of a crescent moon pendant and a note beside it. "For Amara, my moon. Ko." He closed the notebook slowly. "Is something wrong?" Tiana asked, turning to face him. Up close, her eyes carried a familiar shade of warm brown he had learned to recognize in old photographs. Her cheekbones held a shape his mind tugged toward a memory he avoided touching. The pendant lay against her collarbone, innocent and extraordinary. "No," he said, but his voice was softer now, tethered to a past that had never let go. "Nothing's wrong." He faced the room, posture relaxed again, and nodded to the staff. "Thank you. We're done." They stepped into the mall corridor and the noise rushed back. Music from a clothing store, coins clinking in a coffee shop jar, two friends arguing in Yoruba about weekend plans. The city lived on, unaware it had almost watched a man fall backward into a story he had buried. Tiana hugged her jacket around herself even though the air was warm. She walked beside him in small, careful steps. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I should give it back." "You should keep it," he replied. "And before you argue," he glanced at her with a sideways smile, "you should at least let me buy you a meat pie. It's the law when strangers almost cry in jewelry stores." She didn't want to laugh, but the joke loosened something in her chest. "There's no such law." "There is now," he said. "Come." They crossed to a small cafe with plastic chairs and a glass case full of pastries that gleamed with egg wash. The woman at the counter knew Kenechi by his quiet "good afternoon," and added an extra puff to the paper bag without writing it down. Tiana held her hands under the table, thumbs worrying the edge of her sleeve while the pendant pressed a steady moon-shaped warmth into her skin. "Why did you really do it?" she asked when they Saturday. "People look at girls like me and see a story they've told themselves already. Why rewrite it?" Kenechi considered his meat pie, then looked past it at the girl whose question was older than both of them. "Because once," he said, "someone rewrote mine." He didn't add details. "Not yet." But the way his eyes went far told Tiana his answer had weight. She recognized that look. People wore it after funerals and graduations. It was the look of someone standing at a place where pain and gift shook hands. "Where are you headed?" he asked. "Yaba," she said. "I'm between things." She tucked hair behind her ear. "I help my aunt sell soft drinks at the bus stop. I'm saving up for a course. Digital design." "Maybe." She shrugged quickly. "I'll sort it out." "Digital design," he repeated, tasting the words like he was time-traveling through them. "Do you have a portfolio?" She laughed once. "In my head." He smiled again, but a different thought nagged him. Something about the engraving, about the particular curve of the letter and the way her features made the past knock on the present's door like an old friend without a key. He reached into his notebook once more, not realizing his hand had moved until the leather was open on the table between the meat pies. Tiana frowned. "Is that a sketch of my necklace?" "Not yours," he said without thinking. "Someone else's." He saw her face and added quickly, "I mean an idea. From a long time ago." "How long?" she asked. "Years," he said. "Back when I thought a gift could fix things." He traced the crescent moon with his fingertip. "We were waiting. The hospital lost paperwork. We missed a moment." He closed the book. "Life is untidy." He looked up. Tiana had gone very still. "Which hospital?" she asked carefully, each word weighed before it left her mouth. "Gracie Mercy," he said. "A long time ago." Tiana's hands tightened in her lap. She had heard that name her whole life. It was the hospital her mother spoke of with a mixture of gratitude and regret. It was where her mother said the world had almost decided differently. Something like electricity snapped open in Tiana's mind. She reached for the clasp at her neck, fingers blind, and found the tiny hinge. She tugged and felt it give. The pendant opened like a book. Inside, hidden beneath the stone, was a faded, pin-sized photograph sealed in with clear resin. The picture showed a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket printed with little stars. The corner of the photo had letters on it, almost too small to see. She tilted it toward the light and squinted. The letters spelled out the beginning of a name. Her breath caught. She knew this story from her mother's late-night sighs. A nurse had once whispered that something got mixed on a day when storms broke the city's power and generators hiccuped. A missing tag. A wrong room. A held breath that traveled from one life into another. Kenechi saw her face pale and reached across the table without meaning to, his palm open. "Tiana." She closed the pendant with a snap and looked at him, eyes wide, voice shaking. "Who were you waiting for?" she asked. "Back then." His mouth opened but no sound came out. The mall noise faded. The cafe smell vanished. All that existed was the rhythm of two hearts that did not know whether to race toward each other or run. He swallowed and managed to push the words past whatever had locked his throat. "My daughter," he said. The word landed between them like a dropped key. Tiana's chair scraped. She stood, dizzy with 1,000 puzzle pieces rising from years of quiet and clicking into place all at once. The necklace felt suddenly heavy, like truth has weight. Outside the cafe window, rain began again, soft then harder, the kind that rinses a city clean. She reached for the pendant as if it might steady her. The tiny hinge that hid the faded photo pressed into her finger. She looked from it to him. "Sir," she whispered, but it wasn't a question. He stood too, slow, unsure, the careful person he always was when something fragile needed two steady hands. Behind them, a child ran past the cafe door laughing, a bright sound against the rain. Kenechi took a breath that shook like a bridge under sudden load. "Tiana," he said, and then, unable to stop himself, the name that wasn't hers yet pulled him like tide. Amara? The lights flickered. Somewhere a store alarm chirped and went silent. The pendant on Tiana's chest warmed as if it had heard its name. And before either of them could decide what to do next, a voice from the entrance of the cafe cut through the air, crisp, urgent, and certain. "Step away from that girl," the voice commanded. "She's coming with me." Every head in the cafe turned toward the doorway. A woman stood there with an umbrella dripping rainwater and a look that could quiet a classroom. She wore a plain navy dress and sensible shoes. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf the color of hibiscus. A canvas tote hung from her shoulder, stained by work and weather. She didn't flinch at the sight of Kenechi. She didn't blink at the necklace on Tiana's chest. She just pointed. "Tiana," she said, voice leveled by years of being obeyed, "get your bag. We're going." "Auntie Vera?" Tiana's confusion slipped out as a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "Preventing a mistake," Auntie Vera said. "Move." Kenechi stepped forward, palms open to show he meant no harm. "Good afternoon, ma'am." "I know who you are," she cut in. "Everyone knows." The rain rattled harder against the glass. A waiter coughed. Someone at a nearby table pretended to scroll a phone but did not scroll at all. "I bought her the necklace," Kenechi said. "There was a misunderstanding in the store." "There always is," Auntie Vera replied. Her eyes never left Tiana. "Bag. Now." Tiana bent for her backpack on instinct, then stopped halfway and straightened. The pendant warmed where it touched her skin. The hinge pressed into her finger again like a tiny heartbeat. "Auntie," she tried, finding the courage she used to find when she defended herself at the bus stop. "He didn't do anything wrong." "I didn't say he did," Auntie Vera said. "I said we're leaving." Kenechi weighed his words. He could have turned on the power people expected from him, the calm authority that moved meetings, the smooth phrases that solved problems. But something about this woman's certainty made him choose a different road. "Please," he said, keeping his voice gentle, "may we sit a moment? There's something you should know." "What I should know," she said, "is that my niece has a home to get to, a pot of stew to mind, and a night class folder that is waiting for files. That is what I should know." The last line took Tiana by surprise. "You sign me up?" she asked. "We will discuss it at home," Auntie Vera said. "Now." But Tiana didn't move. She looked from her aunt to Kenechi, then back again. "Auntie," the clasp opened. "There's a photo inside. A baby at Gracie Mercy. And the engraving, Amara." For the first time, the tough slate of Auntie Vera's face cracked. It happened fast, like an eyelid twitch, but both of them saw it. She glanced at the pendant, then at Kenechi, then away as if the floor might offer an easier problem. "Please," Kenechi said, softer. "I'm asking for only a few minutes." A long second stretched. Finally, Auntie Vera walked to the table and lowered herself into a chair. She placed the umbrella carefully beside her feet. "3," she said. "No debates. No promises. 3 minutes." They sat. The cafe's hum returned. A blender somewhere, a spoon clinking a cup, 2 boys arguing about soccer. It all sounded thin under the weight of what none of them knew how to say. "I once designed a necklace," Kenechi began, speaking as if he were telling a story to a room full of strangers who didn't trust him yet. "For someone I loved. A crescent moon. I had the engraver add a name inside the clasp. Mara. It was meant to be a gift. The day I planned to give it, the hospital called. The storm had knocked power. Wires hummed. Generators coughed. Papers were misplaced. What we were waiting for didn't arrive as we hoped." His jaw tightened at the memory, then loosened again. "I thought the necklace was lost too. Today I saw it again. On her." He nodded toward Tiana. "And the engraving was still there." "You think she is yours," Auntie Vera said, with no softness to pad the words. "Just like that." "No," he said, and the quiet certainty in his voice surprised even him. "I think something is wrong in a way that can be made right." The hibiscus scarf moved as she exhaled through her nose. "The hospital called me that day too," she said. She looked at Tiana as if the girl were a lamp she had kept burning with her own breath. "Your mother and I waited through the thunder. Your mother held you and laughed at the rain because she said your laugh sounded the same. They tagged you. They tagged another. I saw a nurse cry in the hallway. I told her to go drink water and come back to do her job steady. When we left, I held the discharge paper with both hands like it would fly away." She swallowed. "We did not have a car. We walked to the bus stop." "Your mother," Kenechi said quickly, unable to unclench his fists. "Was her name Grace?" Grace Johnson, she replied, meeting his stare. She chose to keep both names. So the world would remember who she belonged to before it tried to rename her. Grace Johnson. The name landed in him like a small light flicking on in a forgotten room. He remembered a smile in a clinic corridor. He remembered thank you cards written in careful cursive. He remembered a promise he had made to someone else but meant for the city. Build a place where storms could not decide a child's future. Grace told me stories about that night, Tiana said. When the power cut. When the nurse couldn't find a tag. When another baby cried like me. She told you the stories, Auntie Vera said, voice softer than it had been since she arrived, but not the fear. That one stayed with me. I counted your breaths at night for months. I learned every mark on your body. I learned the rhythm of your crying from the next block. So you know then, Kenechi said. Something about that night was untidy, she finished for him. Yes. But I also know this city. I know men with good suits and easy answers. I know how people can be turned into grand gestures and then forgotten. I am not a grand gesture, he said, a flare of heat finally sparking under his calm. He caught himself, softened again. And she is not an answer. She is a person. Both of you stop, Tiana said quietly. It was the first time she had raised her voice in the conversation, and the firmness in it made them pause. You're talking like I'm outside the room. Silence held them a moment, resizing everything. Sorry, they said together. A tiny smile tugged at her mouth despite the weight pressing on her. Auntie, she said, you always told me to meet truth standing up, not lying down. If there is truth to meet here, I want to stand. Auntie Vera's hands, work rough and careful, folded atop the table. Standing does not mean walking into a storm without an umbrella. I have two, Kenechi said, reaching into his pocket. He held up an extra umbrella the cafe had given him weeks ago when a meeting ran late and rain surprised him. It was a silly attempt at a joke, but it loosened something again. Even Auntie Vera's mouth twitched. Fine, she said. One thing at a time. The pendant first. Show me the photo. Tiana lifted the clasp with her nail and opened the tiny hinge. The faded picture caught the cafe light. Auntie Vera leaned in, squinting. She pulled a pair of reading glasses from her tote, thick, scratched, reliable, and slid them on. Her breath went shallow. There, on the corner of the photo, barely visible but not imagined, were letters printed by a clinic machine that never rested, AMA. Auntie Vera reached into her tote and pulled out a small tin, the kind they used to hold mints. From it she took a folded strip of cloth, old, laundered too many times, still smelling faintly of antiseptic and baby powder no matter how many years had passed. A tiny plastic clip was sewn to one end. On the clip, faded but intact, a hospital code read, RM7, Storm Temp 2. I kept it, she said. From that night. The nurse switched your tag for a temporary one when the power flickered. She said she would fix it when the system was back. I took the temp tag home. I don't know why. Maybe I knew I would need to prove something someday. Kenechi bent over the relic like a student over a holy book. He didn't touch it as if his fingers might erase the years. Do you remember the nurse's name? He asked. Auntie Vera nodded slowly. Daniels, she said. Ruth Daniels. Kenechi's eyes met hers. Ruth Daniels still works, he said. Not at Gracie Mercy. At a clinic my foundation supports in Surulere. I see her at fundraisers. She was a hero that night. She carried newborns when other people ran for candles. He swallowed. She also told me there were inconsistencies. She filed a report. It vanished. Of course it did, Auntie Vera said. Paper learns how to disappear in this city. The three of them sat with the facts like they were stones on a table, heavy and impossible to rearrange without someone bleeding. Outside the rain eased. The mall's lights steadied. Next step, Tiana said, surprising herself again with the strength in her own voice. We talked to Nurse Ruth. I'll call her, Kenechi said, already reaching for his phone. She'll answer. Before he could tap her name, a shadow crossed the table. The waiter set down a fresh bottle of water and 2 napkins, then nodded toward the cafe entrance. Sir, he said, eyes flicking with the excitement of small gossip, there are police at the mall desk asking for you. For me? Kenechi asked, puzzled. For both of you, the waiter amended, lowering his voice. And for a girl with a crescent necklace. Auntie Vera's hand gripped Tiana's wrist on instinct. We did nothing, she said. I know, the waiter said quickly. But you should see this. He slid a phone toward them, the screen already playing a grainy video someone had sent him. The jewelry store appeared. The alarm light blinked red, then red again. But the case hadn't been touched. The latch hadn't moved. The alarm had triggered by itself. Remote, Kenechi said under his breath. Someone set it off. Why would someone do that? Tiana asked. The waiter tapped the screen to reveal the sender's caption, a single line that made the back of Kenechi's neck prickle. If you want the truth about Amara, bring the girl to Gracie Mercy at midnight. Come alone. The rain had thinned to a whisper when they stepped out of the cafe, but tension hung thicker than harmattan dust. The mall's polished floors glowed under pale lights, and security guards in navy uniforms whispered into radios as the trio passed. It wasn't the kind of attention Kenechi Okafor was used to. He was used to admiration, cameras, respect that moved aside for him like curtains. But tonight, eyes followed with suspicion, not curiosity. Auntie Vera's grip on Tiana's hand never loosened. Midnight, she muttered. Who still calls meetings at such a devil's hour? The kind that doesn't want witnesses, Kenechi replied. He scanned the concourse. His instincts, sharpened by years of navigating power, picked up every flicker of movement. If someone's baiting us, they chose a dangerous game. Tiana's steps faltered. Do you think they mean to hurt us? He looked at her, really looked, at the fear she tried to hide behind brave eyes and thin sleeves. No, he said, though his voice held too much caution to sound convincing. But truth can frighten people who depend on lies. Whoever sent that message knows something about that night. Auntie Vera shook her head. I won't have you dragging this child into your rich man mysteries. We can go to the police. They can handle it. Kenechi exhaled. The police already think we're suspects. That video is spreading. If we don't go, they'll come for her. That silenced everyone. Outside, the night deepened. Lagos in the dark was its own living thing, horns echoing off puddles, generators coughing behind walls, street hawkers still chasing one last sale. As they stepped into the car park, a black SUV slid from the shadows. Kenechi's driver jumped out and opened the door, startled to see his boss flanked by two women instead of the usual board members or journalists. Sir, the driver stammered. Home, Kenechi said. Quickly. They rode in silence for a while. The windshield wipers kept a steady rhythm, a slow heartbeat for the unease inside. Finally, Auntie Vera spoke. If I go with you, she said, voice flat, it's because she will not step into that hospital alone. But one wrong thing, one sign of foolishness, I walk. Agreed, Kenechi said. Tiana turned her face toward the window. Every passing light left a streak on the glass, like memories rushing backward. Her fingers brushed the necklace again and she whispered almost to herself, maybe this isn't a mistake. When they reached his mansion in Ikoyi, the guards snapped to attention. Kenechi waved them off and led the women inside. The foyer smelled faintly of rain-soaked orchids. Paintings lined the hallway, oil portraits of forgotten towns, children by riverbanks, a city skyline burning with sunrise. Tiana hesitated at the marble stairs. You live here? She asked, almost a whisper. He smiled faintly. Sometimes. Mostly I just visit between meetings. Auntie Vera crossed her arms. All this and you can't buy peace. Peace doesn't come with receipts, he said softly. Then louder, wait here. He returned with a manila folder, thin, yellowed, and stamped confidential, Gracie Mercy medical records. I've had this for years, he said, laying it on the coffee table. When the hospital lost power that night, I requested copies of every newborn record from the maternity wing. Someone sent this anonymously 2 weeks later. I never opened it. I couldn't. Tiana glanced at the seal. Why not? Because sometimes, he said, it's easier to live with questions than what answers might take from you. Auntie Vera's voice softened for the first time. Then maybe it's time to open it. Kenechi's fingers trembled slightly as he broke the seal. The paper inside was brittle, ink faded. He flipped through pages, admissions, delivery logs, staff shifts. Then one document caught his eye. Patient, Grace Johnson, he read aloud. Delivery, female. Complications, temporary loss of power, equipment reset, infant identification delayed. He flipped to the next page. Another file. Patient, Kenechi Okafor. Delivery, female. Infant relocated for emergency oxygen. Temporary tag issued, RM7 Storm Temp 2. Auntie Vera froze. That's the same tag I kept. Kenechi nodded. And the same note on your cloth. So there were 2 babies, Tiana whispered, voice thin as paper. Born the same night. Switched in the confusion. Kenechi looked up slowly. And only one report of the switch, filed by Nurse Ruth Daniels. The same one we need to see tonight. The room fell into heavy silence. Outside, thunder rolled far off toward the lagoon. Auntie Vera crossed herself instinctively. Tiana rubbed her arms. So if I wasn't born to Auntie Grace, then who? No, Auntie Vera cut in. Don't rush ahead. Blood isn't the only thing that makes a person belong. Kenechi nodded. She's right. But we need the truth, whatever it is. He turned to his driver. Get the car ready again. We're going to Gracie Mercy. Sir, the driver said nervously, the hospital's been closed for years. It's abandoned. That's what worries me, Kenechi murmured. By the time they reached the outskirts of Surulere, midnight was near. The hospital stood like a ghost, peeling paint, weeds through concrete, broken windows staring like empty eyes. A single bulb flickered above the entrance, drawing moths like lost souls. The air smelled of rain, rust, and secrets. Stay close, Kenechi said. He led with a flashlight, its beam slicing through dust. Every footstep echoed. They passed faded posters, Safe Birth Saves Lives, Donate Blood, Save a Nation. A trolley lay overturned in the corridor. Somewhere water dripped steadily into a metal basin. Then came a sound, faint but distinct. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Someone's here, Auntie Vera whispered. A figure stepped out from behind the old reception desk. She was older now, perhaps in her 50s, with a nurse's poise that time hadn't managed to erase. Her name tag, cracked but legible, read, R. Daniels. I knew you'd come, she said. Her voice carried a mixture of exhaustion and relief. It's been too long. Kenechi lowered his flashlight slightly. Nurse Ruth. She nodded once. I warned them this day would come. Auntie Vera stepped forward. You remember me? How could I forget? Ruth said. You were the one who refused to leave until the tags were replaced. You cried in the hallway when they told you the power was gone. Tiana's heart hammered. Please, ma'am, she said. Tell me the truth. Am I? Wait, Ruth interrupted, eyes darting toward the shadows. We shouldn't speak here. They watch this place. Who watches? Kenechi asked sharply. The ones who covered it up, Ruth whispered. The ones who took the hospital records and made the mothers disappear. Lightning flashed outside, throwing her face into pale relief. I made a copy of the DNA samples that night, she continued. Hidden in the maternity freezer. Still there, I checked last week. But we can't stay. Why now? Auntie Vera demanded. Why call us here after all these years? Because someone else found it too, Ruth said. Someone who wants to erase what's left. A sudden crash echoed down the corridor. Blast. Heavy boots. Move. Ruth hissed. They followed me. Kenechi grabbed Tiana's hand. This way. They sprinted down a side passage as shadows broke through the main doors. Two men, dark coats, flashlights sweeping. The beam caught the glint of a gun barrel. Auntie Vera gasped but kept running. They burst into the old maternity ward. Rows of rusted cribs sat like graves. Rain slanted through broken windows. Ruth darted to a freezer unit half buried under debris. Here, she said, tugging it open with both hands. The inside was lined with frost and old vials labeled by date. She reached in and pulled out a sealed container marked DNA sample, Storm Night, 2005. Take it, she said, thrusting it into Kenechi's hands. Proof doesn't lie. A shout from behind. Flashlights closing in. Run. Kenechi shouted. They ducked through a side door into the rain-soaked yard. Headlights flared, another vehicle blocking the gate. Tiana clutched the pendant, breath ragged. What do they want? Not the truth, Ruth said bitterly. They want silence. Before anyone could speak again, the sound of a gunshot split the night. Ruth staggered, clutching her side. The vial fell from Kenechi's grip, rolling across the wet ground. Go, she gasped. Go before they. Her words broke into a cough. Then silence. Kenechi grabbed Tiana, dragging her toward the back fence. Auntie Vera followed, skirts heavy with rain. Another shot rang, shattering a window inches from them. They climbed, stumbled, and landed hard on the other side, soaked and trembling. Behind them, the hospital burned with sudden fire, orange light blooming like vengeance. Tiana turned to look one last time as the flames rose, swallowing the place that had given her life and stolen it at the same time. Uncle Kenechi, she whispered shakily, what happens now? He stared at the vial still clutched in his hand, cracked, leaking but intact enough to matter. He swallowed hard. Now, he said, we find out who started this fire, and who's been hiding behind it all these years. Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. The rain had stopped, but the night still bled smoke. Orange light from the burning hospital reflected in puddles as sirens wailed far in the distance. Kenechi's shirt clung to his skin, his breath ragged. Beside him, Auntie Vera was half-crouched, holding her chest, and Tiana's eyes darted between the cracked vial in his hand and the rising flames that swallowed Gracie Mercy whole. "Is she?" Tiana's voice trembled. She didn't finish the question. None of them wanted to. "She's gone," Kenechi said hoarsely. "Ruth Daniels is gone." They stood for a moment in the alley behind the fence, shivering under the cold night. Then Kenechi pocketed the leaking vial carefully. "We can't stay here. Whoever did this will come looking for us next." "Where will we go?" Auntie Vera demanded. "Everywhere you go, trouble follows." "Some truths attract fire," Kenechi said, voice tightening. "But we can't stop now. Ruth died to protect this." He tapped the pocket where the sample rested. Tiana hugged her arms around herself. She said the DNA could prove everything. "Can it still be used?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I know where to find someone who can tell us." He glanced toward the highway, eyes cold with decision. "My friend, Dr. Ijeoma Ease. She runs a private genetics lab in Lekki. If there's any chance to test what's left, she's our only hope." Auntie Vera hesitated. "And if the result says what we fear? Then we face it together," he said. By the time they reached Lekki, dawn was a smear of gray light over the lagoon. The car's tires hissed against the wet road and the city, still half asleep, wore its quiet like a wound. Tiana leaned against the window, watching palm trees sway by the roadside. Her mind spun circles around the name that had haunted the night, Amara. She touched the necklace again. The metal was cold now, lifeless, but somehow she could feel Ruth's trembling hand pressing it into her palm. Proof doesn't lie. When they pulled into the compound of the small genetics lab, the gate creaked open automatically. A security guard stepped forward, yawning, but his eyes widened when he saw Kenechi. "Sir." "Good morning, sir." "No greetings," Kenechi said briskly. "Is Dr. Ijeoma inside?" "Yes, sir. She came early. Said she couldn't sleep." "Good," Kenechi muttered. "Neither could we." Dr. Ijeoma Ease was a small woman with intelligent eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She looked up from a microscope as they entered the white-lit lab. "Kenechi," she said, surprise flickering in her voice. "You look like you fought a storm." "Close," he replied. "We need your help. Now." She wiped her gloves on a paper towel and motioned to a chair. "Tell me." Kenechi explained everything: the necklace, the engraving, the files, Ruth Daniels, the explosion, the vial. Ijeoma listened without interrupting. When he finished, she exhaled deeply and reached for the evidence. "Let me see the sample." He handed her the small tube. The crack along the side had leaked some of its contents, but enough liquid remained to test. She turned it under the lab light and nodded. "I can extract a viable strand," she said. "But I'll need another sample to compare it to." Kenechi understood. "You'll have mine." "No," Auntie Vera interjected sharply. "Not yet. Not until we know what's in there." Ijeoma's eyes darted between them. "You all need to understand what this test will do. Once it's done, there's no unknowing it." Tiana swallowed hard. "I want to know." Kenechi's gaze softened. "Then we'll know." He rolled up his sleeve. Ijeoma took a swab and drew a small amount of saliva. Then she turned to Tiana. "Your turn, my dear." Tiana hesitated, looking at Auntie Vera. Her aunt's face was tight, her eyes uncertain, but she gave a slow nod. Tiana opened her mouth and the swab brushed her cheek. "Good," Ijeoma said, placing both samples beside the damaged vial. "Give me an hour." While they waited, Tiana wandered to the lab's glass wall, watching early commuters rush through the Lekki toll gate. Her reflection stared back at her, eyes wide, tired, unsure of who she really was. "Do you think she knew?" she asked softly without turning. "My mother. Grace. Do you think she knew I wasn't hers?" Auntie Vera closed her eyes. "If she did, she never said. And if she suspected, it didn't matter. She loved you like her own heartbeat." "That's what scares me," Tiana said, her voice breaking. "What if I belong to someone else? What if I'm a stranger to her memory?" Kenechi stood beside her. "You are not a stranger to anyone's heart. You were loved before you knew your name. That can't be undone by a test." She turned to him. "And what about you? If it says I'm yours?" His eyes searched hers, warm, honest, but shadowed by regret. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life earning what she already gave you freely." She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. The sound of the machines in the next room filled the silence. After what felt like forever, Ijeoma emerged from the lab. Her gloves were off now. Her face was unreadable. "I have results," she said. No one breathed. She held out 2 papers, one in each hand. Sample A, DNA from Mr. Kenechi Okafor. Sample B, from the vial labeled Storm Knight. Sample C, from Miss Tiana Johnson. Her voice softened. Sample B and C, perfect match. Sample A and C, also a perfect match. Auntie Vera's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." Tiana felt the air rush out of her lungs. "You mean?" "Yes," Ijeoma said. "Tiana, you are the biological daughter of Kenechi Okafor." The switch was real. The words landed like thunder. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Tiana stumbled back, shaking her head. "No, no, it can't. Grace was my mother. She held me, she sang to me." Kenechi stepped forward. "And she will always be. Blood doesn't erase love." Tiana's tears spilled freely. "But it changes everything." "It changes nothing that matters," Auntie Vera said firmly, pulling her close. "You are still her daughter. She raised you. You carry her kindness, not just his name." Kenechi's eyes glistened, his voice trembling. "If Grace were here, she'd want you to know. She'd want you to have what she couldn't." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. "This was my will. I named an unknown heir in it. I always felt something was missing. That empty name, it was waiting for you." Tiana's lips parted in shock. "Me?" He nodded. "You." Before any of them could speak again, the lab door burst open. 2 uniformed police officers rushed in, guns drawn. "Hands where we can see them," one shouted. "Mr. Kenechi Okafor, you're under arrest for arson and the murder of Nurse Ruth Daniels." "What?" Auntie Vera screamed. "That's absurd." The officer held up a phone. On the screen was a blurry image of the fire, and a figure in a dark coat fleeing the scene, looking eerily like Kenechi. "It's not him," Tiana cried. "He was with us." But the officer was already reading the warrant. Kenechi raised his hand slowly. "Let them do their job," he said quietly. "The truth will clear itself." Tiana grabbed his sleeve. "Don't let them take you." He gave her a small, reassuring smile. Sometimes truth costs a night in a cell before it buys freedom. As the officers led him out, Auntie Vera pulled Tiana into her arms. "We'll fix this, my child," she whispered. "We'll fix all of it." But as Kenechi disappeared through the doorway, one thought echoed in Tiana's chest like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. If he didn't set that fire, who did? And deep in her pocket, the crescent necklace grew warm again. Morning light poured into the small flat in Yaba, but it brought no comfort. Tiana sat curled on the couch, the television flickering across her damp cheeks. Every news channel repeated the same headline. "Billionaire philanthropist arrested for arson and murder at abandoned hospital." Kenechi's photo filled the screen, confident, powerful, noble. Then a second photo, flames engulfing Gracie Mercy. The voiceover said words that made her stomach twist. Sources claim the explosion was deliberate. Authorities say Okafor may have been covering up evidence related to an old adoption scandal. Tiana turned the volume down and buried her face in her palms. "They're destroying him," she whispered. "They're saying he killed that nurse to hide the truth." Auntie Vera came in from the kitchen carrying a steaming cup of tea. Her eyes were red from a sleepless night. "You can't believe everything on TV, child. They lie faster than they breathe." "But the police," Tiana said. "They said there was video evidence." "Evidence planted by who?" Auntie Vera set the tea down firmly. "A man who builds hospitals for orphans suddenly decides to burn one down? Use your sense." Tiana sighed. "Then who did it?" Auntie Vera didn't answer right away. She pulled the curtain aside, watching street hawkers argue with a Danfo driver outside. "There are people who'd rather kill the truth than let it live," she said softly. "Maybe this isn't about Kenechi at all. Maybe it's about that hospital." Before Tiana could reply, a knock rattled the door. 3 sharp bangs, urgent. Auntie Vera stiffened. "Who's that at this hour?" Tiana moved to the window and peered out. A young woman stood by the door, clutching a folder to her chest, eyes darting up and down the street. She couldn't have been more than 25. "It's a lady," Tiana said. "She looks scared." Auntie Vera hesitated, then opened the door a crack. "Yes." The woman's voice trembled. "Please, are you Tiana Johnson?" Tiana stepped forward. "Yes." "Who are you?" "My name is Lillian. I worked for Mr. Okafor's foundation as a data analyst. Please, may I come in? I think I know who set him up. They let her in. She perched nervously at the edge of the chair, the folder clutched like a lifeline. I was in charge of digitizing old charity records, she began. 2 weeks ago I found files about the Gracie Mercy Hospital, donations, equipment purchases, and something labeled Project Amara. When I opened it, everything crashed. Then the next morning, IT said my access had been revoked. Project Amara? Tiana repeated. Lillian nodded. I didn't think much of it until last night. Before the fire, I got an anonymous email from someone calling themselves the custodian. It said, "He's about to remember what he was never meant to find." I didn't know what it meant until I saw the news. Someone inside his company, Auntie Vera said grimly. Someone who knew about the necklace, the DNA, everything. Lillian nodded. They framed him, Miss Tiana. They knew he'd go to that hospital. They knew someone would die. Tiana leaned forward. Do you still have the email? Yes. Lillian opened her phone and showed the message. The sender's address was encrypted, but the footer contained a symbol, a crescent moon over a triangle. Tiana's heart skipped. That symbol, it's on the back of my necklace clasp. Are you sure? Lillian asked. Tiana pulled the chain free and turned it over. There it was, tiny, almost invisible. The same crescent and triangle etched into the metal. Auntie Vera crossed herself. What kind of evil connection is this? Lillian opened her folder, pulling out several printed documents. These are old ledgers from Project Amara. The signatures at the bottom, look. She pointed to a name, Dr. Raymond Cole. Tiana frowned. Who's that? Kenechi's voice echoed in her memory. We missed a moment. The hospital lost paperwork. We waited for news from Dr. Cole. He was the head physician that night, Lillian said. He handled the neonatal files during the storm. Afterward, he disappeared for a while, then reappeared running his own private hospital. Funded, ironically, by Okafor's own foundation. So he stole from him and blamed him, Auntie Vera said. Lillian nodded. He's powerful, connected, and very careful. But I know where he keeps his backup drives. If we can get the footage from that night, CCTV, delivery logs, it could clear Mr. Okafor's name. You mean break into a man's clinic? Auntie Vera asked. Lillian swallowed. Technically, yes. Tiana straightened. Then we'll do it. Auntie Vera turned sharply. You'll do no such thing. You're barely 19, Tiana. I'm the reason Kenechi's in jail, she said, her voice breaking. If I hadn't gone to that shop, if I hadn't touched that necklace. Stop, Auntie Vera snapped. This isn't your fault. But Tiana shook her head. No. It's my responsibility now. He risked everything to give me truth. I won't sit here while lies bury him alive. Lillian hesitated. We'd have to go tonight. The clinic has security, but I know a side entrance where deliveries come in. Around 11 p.m. it's quiet. Auntie Vera looked from one girl to the other. You both have lost your minds. Tiana reached for her aunt's hand. Auntie, please. You told me to stand when truth comes knocking. This is it. For a long moment the older woman said nothing. Then she sighed deeply. You get this stubbornness from your mother? Grace would have done the same thing. She rubbed her temples. Fine. But if we're doing this, we're doing it properly. I'm coming with you. Tiana's eyes widened. You'll come? I'm not letting 2 children walk into a lion's den alone. Night returned too quickly. At exactly 10:55 p.m., a small unmarked taxi stopped near Cole Advanced Medical Center, a sleek 2-story building with mirrored windows and glowing signage. Tiana, Lillian, and Auntie Vera slipped into the alley behind the compound. The hum of generators mixed with the chirp of night crickets. Back in trance, Lillian whispered. Delivery door near the oxygen tanks. She produced a small keycard from her pocket. I borrowed this from the maintenance department. It should still work. The door clicked open. They entered a narrow hallway lined with cold metal cabinets. The smell of disinfectant hit them like a slap. Server rooms this way, Lillian said, leading them down a dim corridor. Her flashlight beam trembled slightly. Dr. Cole keeps encrypted backups here. They reached a steel door marked authorized personnel only. She swiped the card again. A soft beep, then green light. Inside, the room buzzed with machines. Rows of servers blinked in rhythmic blue light, like an army of quiet eyes. Lillian moved quickly, connecting her flash drive. I'll copy everything from the old archives. It'll take a few minutes. Tiana stood watch at the door, heartbeat loud in her ears. Auntie Vera paced, whispering a prayer under her breath. Got it? Lillian said, pulling the drive free. Let's move. But before they could turn, a light flicked on behind them. Dr. Raymond Cole stood at the doorway. He looked older than in the photos, gray at the temples, tall, neat in his white coat. His voice was calm, too calm. I wondered when curiosity would finally bring someone here. Lillian froze. Dr. Cole? I knew Ruth would meddle one day, he said, stepping closer. And that someone would dig up her mistakes. She died because of you, Tiana said, her voice trembling with anger. You killed her. He smiled faintly. Accidents happen in old buildings. Especially ones I no longer need. You switched the babies, she said, her voice rising. You switched me. Correction, he said, I saved you. Your mother was supposed to die that night. But she didn't. So the only way to keep certain people quiet was to give them something they wanted. A healthy baby. You. Tiana's stomach turned. You're lying. Am I? Cole said smoothly. Who do you think funded that hospital after the storm? Who erased the records? You think Kenechi Okafor built his empire alone? He needed my silence as much as I needed his success. Auntie Vera stepped forward. You're sick. Cole's smile faltered. Perhaps. But sickness pays well in this country. He raised a remote control. A sharp click echoed, and the door behind them locked automatically. Now, he said, you'll give me that flash drive. Lillian clutched it tighter. You'll have to kill us first. He sighed. You sound like Ruth. Before anyone could react, he pressed another button. Gas hissed from vents overhead. Auntie Vera coughed. What is that? Anesthetic, Cole said coldly. You'll sleep before you can scream. Tiana grabbed Lillian's arm, dragging her toward the emergency panel. There has to be a way out. But the room was already blurring. Her knees buckled. Cole walked closer, eyes empty. You should have stayed in your little market, girl. Some truths aren't meant to be owned by the poor. Tiana's vision dimmed. She felt the cold floor against her palms, the necklace burning hot against her skin, hotter than it ever had before. Her fingers brushed the clasp. And just before the darkness claimed her, she heard a voice, faint, electronic, coming from the pendant itself. Tiana, run, it whispered. Then everything went black. The first thing Tiana felt was cold. Cold air on her face, cold metal beneath her hands, cold fear crawling through her chest. She blinked, vision swimming. She was lying on a steel table, wrists loosely strapped with leather bands. Dim light flickered from a bulb above, swaying slightly, probably a generator hum. Her head throbbed. Auntie Vera, she croaked. Lillian? No answer. She turned her head weakly. A few feet away, Auntie Vera slumped against the wall, unconscious but breathing. Lillian was in a chair, her hands tied behind her, a bruise darkening her temple. Then came the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, echoing off tiled walls. Dr. Cole entered, still wearing his pristine white coat, holding a small syringe that glinted under the dim light. His calmness was worse than anger. He looked like a man arranging a dinner table, not planning a crime. Ah, he said softly, our sleeping beauty is awake. What do you want from us? Tiana's voice was raw. Cole placed the syringe on a tray. I want what every man in my position wants, Miss Okafor. Silence. You and your little friends have something that could ruin years of work. You mean lies, she spat weakly. You ruin lives. He smiled without warmth. Truth and lies are just two sides of the same scalpel. Both can save or destroy, depending on who holds it. He turned toward a cabinet and pulled out a small metallic briefcase. You took a drive from my server. It contains files that cannot reach the public. Give it to me and you'll live to walk out of here. I don't have it, Tiana said. He looked at her, amused. Oh, child. I saw you clutch it before the gas hit. You think I'd let you keep it? He opened the briefcase, revealing the flash drive sitting neatly inside. You see? I'm not the villain you think I am, I'm just thorough. He slid the drive into a laptop, typed a few keys, and a set of old, grainy videos appeared. These, he said, turning the screen so she could see, are from that night. The night everything went wrong. The footage showed nurses rushing under flickering lights, power going out, thunder shaking the windows. Two incubators stood side by side, one labeled Amara Okafor, the other Grace Johnson's child. In the chaos, a nurse stumbled, tags falling, alarms wailing. A hand, his hand, reached into the frame, switching the babies before the lights came back. Tiana gasped. You did it. Cole's eyes glinted. Yes. Because your mother, Grace, was not meant to survive. She carried evidence that could have destroyed the foundation I helped build. I gave her another child so she'd disappear peacefully. And she did. You murdered her. He shrugged. She was sick. The hospital reported complications. Death by natural cause sounds cleaner, don't you think? Tiana's tears came hot and fast. You took my life. You took hers. Correction, Cole said again, his tone icy. I made your life. Without me you'd have died that night. He reached for the syringe. Now we make another correction. You and your aunt will fall asleep peacefully. The building will burn. Everyone will blame a faulty generator. And Kenechi Okafor will never speak your name again. But before he could step closer, the lights flickered, once, twice, then cut out completely. Darkness swallowed the room. What now? Cole snapped. Somewhere in the dark, a faint hum began. Then through the black came a small golden glow, from Tiana's pendant. The crescent moon was pulsing, steady, alive. A faint voice, distorted but clear, echoed softly from it again. If you're hearing this, it means you've found her. Cole froze. What is that? The voice continued, calm and male, familiar. My name is Kenechi Okafor. This message is embedded within the microchip inside the pendant I designed years ago for my daughter, Amara. If anything happens to me, this recording will activate by motion and heat. Cole's face went pale. No. That's impossible. Whoever finds this, the voice said, know that I built the necklace not as jewelry but as protection. It contains a hidden GPS tracker linked to my foundation's emergency network. Cole lunged forward. Give it to me. But before he reached her, the pendant emitted a piercing alarm, a sharp, metallic shriek that echoed through the lab like a siren. Cole stumbled back, covering his ears. Outside, heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. Tiana struggled against her straps, pulling until the leather tore. She yanked free, grabbed the syringe from the tray and hurled it at the glass lights above. Sparks flew. The room burst into chaos. The door flew open, and there stood a team of armed security officers, led by none other than Kenechi Okafor himself. His face was smeared with exhaustion, his clothes creased from a night in detention, but his eyes burned with fury. Step away from her, he said coldly. Cole froze, caught between shock and disbelief. How did you? The pendant, Kenechi said. You think I'd build something that precious without protection? The moment it overheated, my system traced it here. Two guards rushed forward and seized Cole, pinning his arms behind his back. He struggled, spitting curses, but Kenechi didn't flinch. He just walked to Tiana, untied her straps, and lifted her gently off the table. She was trembling. You got out? He nodded. My lawyer found security footage proving I left the hospital before the explosion. They had to release me. And when the pendant pinged, I knew you were in danger. Eddie Vera stirred, coughing. I knew this man's head wasn't made for prison, she said weakly. God is good. Kenechi smiled faintly, then looked at Cole. You burned the hospital to bury the truth, but fire can't destroy everything. You left enough ash to show where you walked. Cole sneered. You think the police will believe a story told by a poor girl and a disgraced billionaire? They will, Kenechi said. Because I have something you don't. He held up the flash drive. Your confession. Cole's eyes widened. How? When the lights went out, your laptop auto-synced to the cloud, Kenechi said evenly. Every word you spoke, every video file you opened, it's all backed up. For the first time, Dr. Cole's composure cracked. His face twisted with rage as officers dragged him toward the door. You think this changes anything? He shouted. You think she'll forgive you when she learns what your money paid for? You both live in a lie built by me. Maybe, Kenechi said quietly. But at least we'll live. Hours later, dawn crept over Lagos again, softer this time, almost gentle. The chaos had drained from the world for a moment. They stood on the rooftop of the clinic, sirens fading in the distance as police vans rolled away. Tiana leaned on the railing, the city wind brushing through her hair. Beside her, Kenechi watched the sunrise, the same color as the pendant's glow. So, it's over? She asked. He nodded. For now. Cole will answer for what he did. But truth never ends, it just keeps unfolding. She turned to him. You saved me. He shook his head. You saved us. If not for your courage, I'd still be in a cell and Cole would still be free. Tiana smiled weakly. Grace always said truth makes you lose sleep before it gives you peace. I finally understand what she meant. Kenechi looked at her for a long moment. Then quietly he reached into his pocket and pulled out the same notebook he'd carried since the day they met. He tore a page from it and handed it to her. On it, in neat handwriting, was one line. For Amara, who found her way home even through fire. Tiana stared at the words. Her throat tightened. You still call me Amara? I call you both, he said. Because you are both my daughter and Grace's. Two hearts built you and you carry them together. She blinked back tears. What happens now? He smiled gently. Now we rebuild. Together. They stood in silence, watching as the first rays of sunlight spilled over the lagoon, light finding its way through smoke just as they had. For the first time in weeks, the morning breeze carried peace instead of panic. Lagos traffic hummed below like a slow, living river. Inside Kenechi's mansion, sunlight streamed through the wide windows, filling the white walls with warmth. Yet Tiana still felt like she was living in a dream, the kind you're afraid to wake from because reality might be crueler. She sat in the living room, staring at the same crescent necklace that had changed her entire life. It now hung around her neck loosely, the tiny hinge repaired and sealed. She touched it lightly. It was warm again, not from danger this time but from the life it now symbolized. Auntie Vera walked in, balancing a tray of steaming jollof rice and fried plantain. Eat something, I beg, she said, setting it down. You've been staring at that thing like it owes you rent. Tiana smiled faintly. I just keep thinking, everything that's happened, the fire, the lies, the truth, all because of this necklace. Everything happens for a reason, Auntie Vera said, sitting beside her. God hides answers in strange places. Sometimes even gold. Kenechi entered the room, still in his dark gray shirt from court, his expression calm but tired. He had just returned from giving testimony that ensured Dr. Cole's arrest and exposure. The police are finished with me for now, he said, taking a seat across from them. Cole's confession and the backup footage sealed his fate. He'll face trial for arson, murder, and medical fraud. Good, Auntie Vera said curtly. May he find a new clinic in prison. Tiana looked up at Kenechi. What about the foundation? His expression darkened slightly. There will be audits. People will whisper. Some donors may walk away. But if this whole thing taught me anything, he paused then smiled faintly. It's that truth, no matter how messy, is better than pretending perfection. A moment of quiet filled the room. Then he turned to Tiana. I also met with the adoption board this morning. Your documents, both Grace's and mine, were found. They verified everything. You have the right to choose how you want your identity to read officially. Tiana's chest tightened. Choose. He nodded. You can remain Tiana Grace Johnson as your mother raised you, or you can reclaim your birth name, Amara Kenechi Okafor. Or both. The air felt suddenly heavy with the weight of that decision. Auntie Vera's eyes shimmered. You don't need to rush. Names are like footprints, they should fit where your heart walks. Tiana took a deep breath. I want both. She looked between them, her aunt and her father. Grace gave me love. You gave me life. I want to carry both names so I never forget either. Kenechi's eyes glistened. Then it settled, Tiana Amara Johnson Okafor. She smiled, tasting the new name softly on her tongue. That sounds whole. Auntie Vera clapped her hands together. Whole indeed. Now eat this food before it gets cold. They all laughed, a sound that filled the house like sunlight breaking through a storm. For the first time in a long while, there was no fear in it. Later that afternoon, Kenechi took Tiana on a drive. They passed through the bustling streets of Ikoyi, past vendors waving roasted corn, Danfo drivers honking like impatient drummers, and schoolchildren laughing in uniforms. The world had continued spinning, unaware that theirs had nearly stopped. He parked near an old empty lot where workers were clearing debris. Tiana squinted at the signboard. Coming soon, Amara Mercy Children's Hospital. She turned to him, eyes wide. You're rebuilding it? Yes, Kenechi said softly. Not as a hospital of secrets this time, but of hope. We'll name it after you and the woman who raised you, Amara and Grace. It'll be a place where no child is ever misplaced, forgotten, or denied care because of money or power. Tiana blinked back tears. That's beautiful. He smiled faintly. It's the least I can do. For both of you. She looked up at the half-finished structure. Workers moved like ants, carrying cement, painting, rebuilding what once stood in ashes. A gentle wind lifted her braids and she whispered, Mom would have loved this. She's watching, Kenechi said. She'd be proud. For a while they stood side by side saying nothing, just listening to the faint clang of hammers, the rhythm of rebirth. That night, at the mansion, Kenechi hosted a quiet dinner, just family and a few trusted friends from the foundation. The chandelier lights shimmered like stars over the polished table. Auntie Vera had outdone herself in the kitchen, filling the air with the scent of pepper soup, coconut rice, and fried turkey. In the middle of the laughter and conversation, a reporter from African Heart Stories approached Kenechi quietly. "Sir," she said politely, "would you like to make a statement to the press tomorrow? The world wants to hear your side." Kenechi shook his head, smiling faintly. "The world has heard enough noise. Let them see action instead. When the hospital opens, that will be my statement." The reporter turned to Tiana. "And you, Miss Johnson Okafor? Anything to say to other young people who might feel lost between who they were and who they've just discovered they are?" Tiana hesitated, glancing at Kenechi and Auntie Vera. Then she said softly, "Sometimes what you're looking for isn't missing, it's just waiting for you to be brave enough to see it." The room went quiet. Even the reporter smiled. "That's powerful. Thank you." Hours later, when the guests had left and the mansion had gone quiet again, Tiana wandered out to the balcony. The night sky was clear, the moon bright, shaped like a crescent, glowing faintly through the clouds. Kenechi joined her, holding 2 mugs of steaming cocoa. "I couldn't sleep either," he said, handing her one. "I was just thinking," she said, looking up. "Everything feels peaceful. But part of me still wonders, why me? Out of all the people in the world, why was I the one chosen, switched, saved, and then found?" He looked at her gently. "Maybe because your life was meant to carry both sides of the story, wealth and struggle, pain and healing. Some stories aren't accidents, Amara. They're invitations." She looked at him curiously. "Invitations to what?" "To become the kind of person who can turn pain into purpose." She smiled softly, wrapping her hands around the mug. "Then I guess I'm ready to accept." Kenechi nodded. "And I'm ready to walk beside you." They stood in silence again, the wind soft against their faces. The crescent moon hung above, the same shape as the pendant she wore, the same light that had guided them through darkness. Far below the balcony, a car's engine started quietly in the distance. A shadowed figure in a black coat watched the mansion from across the road, then spoke into a phone. "She's alive," the voice said. "And she has the files." Pause. Then the other end of the line crackled faintly. "Good," a deep voice replied. "Phase 2 begins now." The car drove off into the night, headlights vanishing like ghosts. Inside, unaware of the coming storm, Tiana whispered to her father, "It's strange, but I feel like my story just started." And somewhere in the darkness, fate nodded in agreement. Because the truth, no matter how bright, always casts a shadow. The morning after the dinner felt too calm, unnaturally so. The air carried a faint scent of harmattan dust, and Lagos looked washed clean by the early dawn. Birds chirped above the compound walls, and the rhythmic sound of the gardener's broom brushed across the tiled driveway. Inside, Tiana sat by the wide living room window, sketching quietly. A fresh sheet of paper lay before her. She was designing the new hospital logo. 2 hands forming a heart beneath a crescent moon. She smiled faintly as she shaded the moon's outline. Kenechi walked in, already dressed for a meeting. He stopped to look over her shoulder. "You drew that?" "Yes," she said, grinning shyly. "I wanted something that reminds people of the necklace but also of healing." He smiled. "You have your mother's heart and her creativity." Auntie Vera, passing by with a laundry basket, chuckled. "And her stubbornness. Don't forget that part." Everyone laughed softly, the sound filling the house like sunlight on still water. For the first time, it felt like peace wasn't pretending. But peace has a way of standing too still before the storm. By midday, Kenechi drove to his office for a press meeting about the hospital project. He promised to be back by evening. "You two stay home and rest," he said before leaving. "Today the world gets to see the beginning of something beautiful." Tiana waved from the balcony as the black SUV disappeared down the driveway. She turned to Auntie Vera. "Maybe we should make his favorite soup tonight. Something to celebrate." "Go and start peeling those yams," her aunt said, smiling. "Let's surprise him." Tiana tied her hair up and went into the kitchen, humming softly. She didn't notice the unmarked white envelope slipped under the front door until the wind from the open window made it flutter against the tiles. She frowned, walked over, and picked it up. There was no name, no return address. Only one word written across the front in black ink: Amara. Her heart skipped. No one had called her that in writing yet. Slowly she tore the seal open. Inside was a small flash drive and a folded note. The note read, "If you value your father's life, Come alone to the construction site of Amara Mercy Hospital at sunset. Don't tell anyone. Don't bring the police. This is about the truth you haven't heard yet. The custodian. Tiana's breath caught. The custodian, she whispered. Lillian had mentioned that name before, the one who had sent the first email. But hadn't Dr. Cole been behind that? If he was in custody, who was this? Auntie Vera called from the kitchen. Tiana. Where's that knife? The one with the red handle. Tiana quickly folded the letter and hid it in her pocket. Coming, Auntie. But her hands trembled as she chopped the vegetables. 1,000 thoughts crowded her mind. What if it's a trap? What if it's another lie? What if Dad is in danger? By the time the sun began to drop behind the rooftops, she had made her decision. She slipped out of the house quietly, leaving a note on the dining table. I'm going to meet someone who knows more about the hospital fire. Don't worry. I'll be fine. Tiana. The construction site loomed ahead, its unfinished walls glowing orange under the sunset. The skeletal frame of the new hospital stood silent, wrapped in scaffolding. Tiana climbed through an opening in the gate and looked around. Hello, she called. Who's there? A faint echo answered her. Then a figure stepped out from behind a pile of cement blocks. A man in a long black coat, face shadowed by the dying light. You came, he said. Tiana's pulse quickened. Who are you? He took a slow step forward. Someone who owes you the truth. As he stepped into the light, she saw him clearly, mid-40s, dark skin, lean face with sharp eyes. But there was something familiar about him, something she couldn't place. I worked at Gracie Mercy, he said. Before Cole took over. I was the systems technician, the one who ran the power backup that night. Her heart pounded. You were there? When the babies were switched? He nodded. Yes. And I recorded everything. He lifted a small device in his hand. That flash drive I sent you, it holds a copy of the full footage from that night. Cole thought he deleted it, but I kept one hidden in the backup servers. I called myself the custodian because I've been guarding the truth ever since. Why now? She asked, her voice trembling. Why tell me now? Because it's not over, he said grimly. Cole wasn't working alone. He had partners, investors who profited from the cover-up, people who still run hospitals today using stolen funds meant for the poor. They're planning to take over the new Amara Mercy project. And they'll do anything to stop it. Before Tiana could respond, headlights flooded the site. 3 black SUVs rolled in, engines humming like predators. The man's eyes widened. They followed you. The car doors opened and men in suits stepped out. At their center was a woman, elegant, cold, powerful. The same reporter who had interviewed Tiana at the dinner. Mrs. Duroji, Tiana gasped. You're with the media. Not exactly, the woman said, her lips curving into a thin smile. You think I work for the news? I own it. And the hospitals. And the board that approves them. You and your father almost ruined a billionaire industry with your sentimental crusade. You were behind Cole, Tiana realized, stepping back. You funded him. Of course, Mrs. Duroji said smoothly. But he got greedy. He wanted to be more than a partner. That's why he had to burn. You killed him? I cleaned up, she said coldly. And now I'll do it again. She turned to her men. Bring the girl. But before they could move, a new voice rang from behind the SUVs, calm, deep, and familiar. Touch her and you'll regret it. Kenechi stepped out from the shadows, flanked by 2 police vehicles, lights flashing red-blue across the half-built walls. Tiana's knees nearly buckled with relief. Dad. Mrs. Duroji's smile vanished. You again? Me again, Kenechi said. You should know better than to threaten my family. The custodian raised his hands. I sent her the message so you'd follow her here, he said to Kenechi. I wanted you both to hear this together. He plugged a small projector into the flash drive. A faint video flickered against the unfinished concrete wall, footage from the night of the storm. It showed Dr. Cole speaking frantically on the phone. Then a woman's voice came through the static. Make the switch, Cole. I'll handle the paperwork. If the child lives, we both win. If she doesn't, we bury the story. The voice was unmistakable. Mrs. Duroji. Kenechi's jaw tightened. That's your voice. Her face hardened. So what? You think one recording will bring me down? I am the system. No, Kenechi said. You were. But systems fall. He nodded toward the police officers, who had their cameras live-streaming to national media. You're on record. Mrs. Duroji's face twisted. She tried to run, but the officers blocked her path. One by one her men dropped their weapons and surrendered. Tiana exhaled shakily, tears spilling down her cheeks. The custodian turned to her. "It's over now. The truth's free." She looked at him. "Why did you help us?" He smiled faintly. "Because I saw the real Amara that night. And I swore that when she grew she'd know what her life was worth." Then, before anyone could stop him, he disappeared into the shadows, lost in the chaos of police lights. A few weeks later, the Amara Mercy Children's Hospital opened its doors to the public. Reporters filled the courtyard. The ribbon was gold, shining under the morning sun. Kenechi stood beside Tiana and Auntie Vera. His voice carried steady and proud as he spoke to the crowd. "This hospital stands as a promise that no truth will ever again be buried under money or fear. It stands for every child who was lost, for every mother who was silenced, and for every grace who loved without conditions." He turned to Tiana. "And it stands because one young woman refused to stop asking questions." The crowd applauded as Tiana stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice was clear. "I used to think I was just a poor girl admiring something I couldn't afford," she said. "But now I know. Sometimes the thing you admire most isn't gold or diamonds. It's truth. And truth will always find you, even if it has to burn its way through fire." As the ribbon fell and the hospital doors opened, the crowd cheered. Somewhere above, the same crescent moon pendant caught the light, glowing like it remembered. Later that evening, as the courtyard emptied, Tiana stood alone, watching the sunset over the new hospital. She could almost feel Grace's arms around her and hear her voice whispering, "My moon child, shine wherever you are." Kenechi joined her quietly. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. She smiled. "About how far I've come. About how everything I thought I'd lost turned out to be waiting for me." He nodded. "And about what comes next." She turned, eyes bright. "I think I'll tell stories. Real ones. About people who found truth in the hardest places." He smiled proudly. "Then maybe you'll tell ours first." She laughed softly. "Already did." And as the last light faded from the sky, the crescent moon rose again, the same symbol that had once been just jewelry, now reborn as a legacy.